Welcome back, everybody. It is 4 a.m. Now, I did cover in the last couple of episodes brief overview of pregnancy and babies and some parenting tips for those who needed it. I will go more in depth in those if they are requested. I was just asked to complete those topics, so I did. Like I said, I do take requests on my Facebook and my Twitter, so as well as the Anchor app itself. If you have any suggestions, feel free to hit me up. Now, like I mentioned before, it is finals week for a lot of people, and even if it's not for you in particular, there are still high schoolers out there who need this advice. So today, I'm going to cover study skills for those who need it. And then I'll follow that up with top tips for studying. This will help you improve your chances of learning what you need to and studying for your exams. Besides, who likes failing exams? I know I don't. So with that, this brings up the first question. What are study skills? Study skills are the skills you need to enable you to study and learn more efficiently. They are an important set of transferable life skills. Okay? I will provide you the generic study skill advice appropriate to learners across all disciplines and in different, life circumstances, whether full or part-time students, those returning to education later in life, those engaged in professional development, and anybody else who just wishes to learn more effectively. These are what I'm going to cover today, and I want to make sure that you get as much out of this as you can. Unlike my last couple of podcasts, this one in particular has a strict audience at which I'm aiming this at. However, this can help just about anybody, okay? There are a lot of different study skills. I'm hoping to cover them all within the next couple of days, if not a couple of hours. I will record more than one podcast in the next couple of days and release them one after the other as I make them. So, I'm going to take a short break and I'm going to cover key points about study skills. All right, key points about study skills. All right. You will develop your own personal approach to study and learning in a way that meets your own individual needs. As you develop your study skills, you will develop what works for you and what doesn't. Okay? Study skills are not subject specific. They are generic, and they can be used when studying in any specific area. You will, of course, need to understand the concepts, theories, and ideas surrounding your specific subject area, though. To get the most out of your studies, however, you'll want to develop your study skills. Okay? You need to practice and develop your study skills. This will increase your awareness of how you study, and you'll become more comfortable. Once you master these study skills, you'll be beneficial throughout your life. All right? Study skills are not just for students. I'm going to go ahead and say that right now. They're not. Study skills are transferable, and you will take them with you beyond your education into new contexts. For example, organizational skills, time management, prioritizing, learning how to analyze, problem solving, and self-discipline. That is required to remain, motivated. Okay? And don't worry, I will cover that. I will cover a lot of these things as time goes on. Now, with that being in mind, a lot of the content that I do provide, especially on my podcast here, are many, many, many different life skills, and many of these are relevant to studying as well. Okay, you'll find two types of study skills that are probably more prominent than others that you'll use. One of the ones I am going to definitely cover in the future later on is how to write an essay and how to be an active listener. And I did say this before that I was going to cover how to be an active listener, so I'll probably do that next or within the day. Okay. So let's get on with our topic. Our study skills include the following: getting organized to study, finding time to study, sources of information for study, and styles of writing, and so on. Okay, a brief overview of these will be as follows. Getting organized is an important first step to effective study, okay? The basic organizational skills you need to be considered with are fundamental skills, such as where and when to study, and the importance of developing a network of contacts who can help you when you need it. Okay? Finding the time to study, is a basic principle of time management, okay, with reference to study. If you manage your time badly, then you will be less productive, which can lead to stress and anxiety. Okay? And like I said, I will cover that so that you'll be able to understand how to better prioritize. Okay? Sources of information for study. Basically, it's the importance of primary, secondary, and tertiary, and basically documents how you may source such information, especially in libraries or online or otherwise. There's different kinds of styles of writing, okay? I will cover the main style of writing that you are likely to come across, including academic, journal, and journalistic styles. But for the most part, just keep this in mind, that the style that you write in plays an effective role. Okay? When studying, it's likely that you will need to read a lot of information, and you will wish to use this time effectively as possible by developing your reading skills. Okay? Discover ways that, you can engage with your reading, and form links, understand opinions, and put ideas and research into perspective. Okay? Or basically, in short, just develop your reading skills in general. Okay? Critical reading and reading strategies. Well, it's basically, in a nutshell, critical reading and critical thinking. Skills which are fundamental to true learning, personal development, and advancement. Okay? I'm going to cover how to develop a personal reading strategy and use a SQ3R to help you manage your reading. Okay? Next would be note-taking. Learning to take notes effectively is only important to study because in many other situations it's not really as helpful. At work and in your personal life, it doesn't really help too much, except for when maybe you're cooking. Okay? If you have an essay, it pays to carefully think about and plan an essay and other pieces of writing when working before you start writing in general. Okay? And as far as essay writing is concerned, learn the processes involved in writing an essay and other pieces of assessed work, and avoid common mistakes and follow best practices to help ensure that the work you produce is of high quality. Okay? Now, something I will probably cover at a later date, but I will eventually cover, is how to write a thesis or a dissertation. I won't go too much into this specific one or even give any details on it because it's a topic for a later date. Okay? And with that being said, keep in mind academic referencing, okay? Learn how to reference correctly. It's vital, especially if you're a student. Alright? You want to avoid plagiarism at all possible. So with that, I bring up this question: what is a theory? As a learner, you will be required to engage with theory. But it's exactly, what is a theory? Okay? A theory is an attempt to prove and provide understanding. Theories attempt to answer the question why, and therefore satisfy our curiosity. Okay? And then with that, assignment finishing touches. Before you submit your assignment for school, university, or work, run through a series of final checks. Avoid potential embarrassing and costly mistakes, and increase the credibility of your work if you can help it. On that note, reflecting on marked work. This page, this specific topic right here is for students. All right, I'm going to encourage you to engage in the feedback you receive from a marker, whether it be your teacher or otherwise. When your work is returned to you, don't just look at the bottom line, the mark, but understand the comments and feedback and learn from any mistakes. While some teachers may or may not provide these, it is really, really helpful. And with that, learn how to revise. Revising for examinations can be a real challenge for many people. Learn and practice some key skills to make your revision time as productive and effective as possible, leaving you better prepared for exams and tests. Okay? Keep these in mind. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started in my next podcast with covering the first of all these topics that I even brought up in the first place as far as a study skill. Okay? And that would be tips to study and then getting organized to study. Let's begin.